Check. All right. So, how's everybody doing after multiple long days of events? Is everybody happy? Yeah. How do you feel about having Scala Days in person again? Happy or no? Yeah. Yes. If you have not yet, if you see any of the organizers, you should take a moment and thank them for all the work that they put into this, because as you know, they have been working on planning this for quite some time, so it's very great to see you all here and to see this happen. However, today we have a panel of individuals that I'm extremely excited to introduce, or rather have them introduce themselves. But first I want to sort of just introduce the idea of the panel and what we'll be talking about today. So as you probably saw, the title was The State of Scala. And I don't know about you, but for myself, looking back over the past few years, I've seen a huge state of transition, whether it be from Scala 2 to Scala 3 to the post-COVID era, to new trends in technology, to all sorts of stuff. So today I hope to pick the brains of everybody on stage and get a good idea of where Scala is at across different industries, across academia, the other stuff, and just get a good feel of where things are at. Just a word, I think hopefully they're all going to be okay with the questions I have. I gave them like the sort of topics that I was going to be covering, but I did not prepare with them. So the questions that you're going to see me asking is, they're sort of unaware of them, but they know maybe what they'll be asking. And also thank you for many of you that gave me questions, because I put it on Twitter, Mastodon, Discord, kind of like all over the place. And I had a whole bunch of people that gave me questions. So the questions that we'll be asking today are sort of a conglomeration of all of those things, all right? So without further ado, I'd love to get started, and I would love each of you on stage to introduce yourself, basically tell us who you are, how you're involved in Scala, and then I'd also like you to tell us one takeaway from this conference that you'll be taking home with you. Lukas, do you want to start?
My name is Lukas. I work for Lightband. We are mostly maintaining Scala 2 in our team, the Scala 2 compiler and standard library, whilst also focusing a lot on migration to Scala 3 and collaborating on Scala 3 compiler. So yeah. I've been at Lightband for 9 years already, and before that I was a PhD in Martin's lab and spent some quality time with the compiler already then. So that's my home code base, really. My takeaway from the conference is really that meeting people that you don't know face to face is still one of the best ways for us to learn what we should be doing and things that we could be doing where I don't know, where what is hurting the community, the users. It was great to be back somewhere in person.
So hello, I am Paweł Marks. I am the lead of the compiler team at Virtus Lab, so one of the two Virtus Lab teams that are parts of this core Scala organization. What I am doing in the compiler, I am mostly taking care about the LTS, and I am doing the releases. So for me, the most important takeaway is, even though the coding, programming is our work, it's good sometimes to find fun in it, to do something new, and feel that something is magic, like the first time you written a hello world.
Hi everyone, my name is Daniela. I am the author of Get Programming with Scala, published by Manning. I've been in the Scala community for 10 plus years, and today I'm representing Morgan Stanley. The takeaway that I will take from this community is that absolutely we need more talks for beginners. I absolutely love, I don't know if Monica is in the audience, but she gave a talk on her first year in Scala, and she discussed the things that worked for her, the things that didn't work for her. We, people that have been around for a while, we need to hear your feedback. We want to hear from people that have recently joined the community. Tell us what works, tell us what doesn't work, so we can improve the ecosystem. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Martin. I have been working with Scala for over 20 years now, and with the compiler the same amount of time. I'm completely thrilled to be here. I think it's an ingredient that can't be replaced for a community to actually have live conferences. I'm super thrilled also to see so many different people doing different things, very interesting things with the language, with the tooling. And I very much want to echo Daniela's thing that what we need to do is get new people into Scala. And for that, we have to emphasize how exciting the language and the community is. And we have to de-emphasize all the super expert complex systems that we also construct and that are exciting, but they shouldn't be the first thing that we reach.
Hello again. My name is Darja. I'm from the Scala Center, currently occupying the title of the Executive Director, previously known as the Community Manager. I am also extremely happy to be here. I cannot believe it's already over. I want to give an amazing shout out to the Xibia team, X47 Degrees. I have to say this now. I don't want to forget about it. They have been doing an amazing job in the past 4 years, including 2 editions of ScalaCon and a full year of bringing this event together. And it's just been a blast. I feel like they have been saving the community throughout like a very difficult time. And we've been a part of it as the Scala Center. And I have to say that main takeaway is that Scala community is as dynamic as it has ever been. Yes, there were some things, some uncertainties and some fears, but the number of problems and solutions and complaints and like improvement feedback we got, I think just goes to show that everybody that is here at least cares about Scala, and that's really what helps us go forward at the Scala Center. So it's been a blast, and thank you for your question.
Hello, my name is Haoyi. I work at Databricks. I've been using Scala about 10 years now, and I'm author of many open source tools and libraries. So my takeaway from the conference is that with Scala 3, there's a lot of new interesting things that you can do with Scala. In many ways, it kind of feels like 2012, 2013 when I came in. Like the IDE didn't work, the tools weren't very good, but the language has so much potential to do so many interesting things that you had never done before. I came from Python and Java. And the things you can do with Scala, even at the time, were very exciting. And I feel like this conference really recaptures a lot of the excitement, or all the possibility, even if not all of it hasn't fully realized yet.
Thanks.
All right, so I have a ridiculous amount of questions, so we'll get started right away because I don't think we'll get to nearly all of them. However, we have some people on the stage that worked for a long time in Scala 2.12, or Scala 2 rather, and then also now in Scala 3. So I would love to know, what are some lessons learned from Scala 2 that you've carried over into Scala 3, whether that be technical, community-oriented, or anything else?
I think working on the language, we really love to make new stuff, and but we also know that what in real projects, people have to get their work done, and if we get in their way, that is not very well perceived. So we have made, during the lifetime of Scala 2, we have made tremendous progress in stability on various levels, source level, binary level, and just keeping things running. We have improved testing a lot over lifetime. Community build was a huge breakthrough for Scala that has been carried over to Scala 3. So focus on keeping things running very well for the users. I think that's a lesson that has gone over from Scala 2 to 3. That's really important.
I'm curious to hear maybe from the person who wrote Scala 3.
So I think the main the main thing I wanted to change is to make Scala 3 an obviously beautiful language, which Scala 2, I think it is a very nice language. I really do like it. I have worked a long time with it. But there's certain things where you say, well, things could be better. Things could be clearer. Things could be safer. Things could be more elegant. And with Scala 3, it was sort of, I gave myself and my team the liberty to say, let's just do that. Initially, it wasn't even called Scala, it was docking. And then it was an open-ended thing to say, well, either we do a new language or we can make it compatible enough to be the next, or to propose it as the next Scala. And in the end, that's what happened. So we essentially had brought the language design close enough to Scala 2, and we had this beautiful idea of binary compatibility, that the 213 libraries can be compiled in both Scala 2 and Scala 3, which helped us a lot with the migration. So I believe Scala 3 is a totally underrated language. It's really a jewel to be discovered. I hope that people will have lots and lots of fun and intellectual satisfaction using it and using its elegance. And I also hope that if we send the message strong enough, that by that way we get lots of exciting and excited newcomers into the language.
So as I mentioned, I saw some people wanting to clap. You can clap if you want to. Go ahead. As I mentioned in the beginning, it's kind of exciting because we have people representing sort of different areas too. Like we have some academics that are on the stage. We have people from organizations that are around community. We have industry leaders, we can say as well. So I'm curious from the different perspectives, how would you define success in Scala 3?
Yeah, so the Python 2 to Python 3 migration took about a decade. If we could get Scala mostly there by 5 to 7 years, or just most people on Scala 3, I think it would be a big success. And that includes things like, your big organizations, your kind of old-fashioned or slower-moving things. Like your startups, maybe your academics, your smaller individuals can move very quickly, pick up the new tooling. But getting the hard shift is moving the legacy over. And like for Scala 2.10 to Scala 2.12 to Scala 2.13, it's been great. The organizations have been able to move, sometimes with great difficulty, but they've done so. And if we can get everyone to Scala 3, I think that would already be a huge success.
To add to that, definitely, depending on how you use Scala today in your company, is going to be easier or more difficult to migrate. So, for example, at Morgan Stanley, we use a lot of compiler plugins. So definitely our path towards Scala 3 is going to be a little bit more complex than the average company. But absolutely, we are excited about Scala 3, and it will happen. It will be very, very painful, but the language is worth it.
Okay. Yeah.
I would like to steal an answer that I heard from Martin. So I think if there are some startups now that are going to grow to become I'm not going to name names, but new big companies that start in Scala 3 right now, and then, I don't know, in a couple of years grow fast. I think that would also be a nice success measure.
Okay. Anybody else have anything to add? Okay. So this question was actually came to me through an article that Haoyi wrote, The Death of Hype, I believe it was called. And it caused, I feel like, a little bit of stir around the community, but it also brought up some really interesting points. If we look back at the history of Scala and the rise of popularity in Scala, there were some killer applications like Spark that caused a rise in popularity. It was also the rise of distributed computing at the time, which caused a lot of people to gravitate towards libraries like Akka and some of the other things. And I've heard it said before, I believe by you, that there needs to be another killer application for Scala. But what would you describe today as the killer feature in Scala?
Well, killer feature is not the same as killer app.
Okay. You can do the app or
Okay.
feature.
And also, if you look back, so where did this killer app comes from? So let's take Spark. Spark came out at the second Scala Days conference in Stanford. It was essentially a couple of grad students from Berkeley. They said, okay, this is a nice language to write our next thing. That became a killer app. So totally unplanned, definitely not enterprisey. There were a couple of grad students. Flink was a group in the Technical University of Berlin who did the same thing. Kafka was essentially a group of renegade engineers at LinkedIn who said, well, let us just do this thing. We know how to do a queue which is much faster than the rest. And LinkedIn says, well, you do it, and then lost interest, and then they essentially formed their own startup. So that's how killer apps happen, and that means you can't plan them. So who knows? I think the strategy must be to make Scala an interesting language for the greatest number of new companies, new startups, new groups, and then something else will come out, but you can't plan it.
Okay. Kind of relate, or go ahead, Haoyi.
Yeah, I guess somewhat related to that. I think the kind of the killer feature for Scala 3 is the same as Scala 2 in that it's a scalable language. So consider something like Spark, right? If you, your PhD student or group, you write Spark in Python, things go great. 2 years later, you realize that it's not scaling, it's too slow, you have no concurrency, you can't package it properly, etc. You can't maintain it because of lack of types, etc. And you spend maybe 1 year rewriting Spark in Java or C++. Now that's how you really take the wind out of your sails, and suddenly your killer app just becomes last year's hype. So Scala is kind of what allowed many of these projects to start off as, hey, I'm a small group doing something cool, and they could really scale to a big project, widely used, stable, performant, highly scalable without having these huge disruptive rewrites or re-architectures. So Scala 3, I think, takes that somewhat more. Now you have Scala CLI to kind of lower the threshold to get started. The white space syntax, people love it or hate it, but frankly, that's one of the reasons why people like Python, because the syntax is so clean. And there are many things that Scala 3 does to try and make things easier to get started and really lower it so that, in the past, it was easy for a PhD group to get started with Scala, but as an individual, I found it very, very hard. And now, maybe even as individuals, I might be able to pick it up with relative ease.
Okay.
So I want to name also one potential, something that may breed some killer apps or killer libraries. And it was shown 2 hours ago on this stage, because we all know that strongly typed languages have won, like all popular languages and all modern languages are strongly typed. But Scala not only gives you strong typing, but it also gives you a way to interact with untyped data, the data from the real world, in a well-structured and typed way. So on the stage 2 hours ago, Martin Kuchera was showing TyQ library, and I think libraries like that allows you, as I said, to interact with untyped word or word with incompatible types, like SQL databases, like Spark data frames, like GraphQL or other things in a well-typed way. This may be a feature, and this may, for example, in future breed some killer app. But it's only one of features. But I haven't seen any other language, maybe TypeScript, but TypeScript's type system is completely different, that you can do things like that.
So I see a common thread of a few things, and I saw this throughout the conference, through the community panel, and also through some of the answers here, that there needs to be a steady, somewhat flow of new people coming to Scala, because without that new flow, maybe you don't have those new killer apps being developed, or those new killer things being explored. So what ideas do you have to make that beginner experience with Scala more easier?
I may start that we've already done a great work as a Scala community, because like 3 years ago, the situation of newcomers to the Scala was miserable. They first needed to learn about SBT to create even a simplest project. And learning SBT, they probably need to learn language that for them was alien, because like SBT configuration is practically different language than Scala they would write. Right now we have Scala CLI that allows for quick prototyping and is a very efficient tool for learning. And also, what is also shown on this stage, we have a Scala toolkit, which is just the beginning of the way, but it allows people to get things done much, much faster and don't spend a lot of time to research and to read arguments on the internet, what JSON library they should use, because like one comes with a language right now.
So I agree with you. The language is important. The toolings that we are developing are important. But I think even more important is the community. I mean, guys, look around. Look how beautiful we are, right? We need to have local meetups. We need to have conferences. We need to encourage people to give talks. We need material that it's easy to understand for beginners, right? And we cannot do that without people telling us that those things are missing. So I want to link back to the community panel. If you have the energy and the will, please open a local meetup, because it's really going to have a positive impact. Sure, the libraries and the features of the language are important, but I think, you know, the people aspect of a community is very, very important. And having a code of conduct and, you know, having a safe space where people can learn. I mean, I still remember 10 years ago when I attended my first conference, somebody told me, how can you not know what a monad is? How is that a good experience? I don't want new people coming to the Scala community having to deal with these attitudes. So yes, tools are important, but we also need a bigger, more welcoming community.
I would just like to build up on what you said and in a way say people might come for Scala, but the retention part is really with people. So they can come for Scala, but they stay so that they can continue learning within the community. So I just wanted.
Mm-hmm. I also think part of that, because the answers so far sort of assumed that we had, you know, individuals that were already coming and it's focused on the newcomer experience. How do you think we can diversify the types of individuals that we are attracting to Scala as well?
Yeah, so one of the big things I did in Scala early on was I helped a lot to popularize Scala.js. And how you popularize something is not by talking to people who are already using it, but by going to meetups and conferences about people who have no idea who you are or what you're doing, and trying to sell it to them. So back then I went to JavaScript meetups, went to Scala meetups, and obviously at the time no one knew what was Scala.js. You do a demo, people clap, and over time, you do this over and over, and eventually people kind of learn what's going on. And I feel like that's something that we need to do better as a Scala community. Like, not just talk, we don't just need to think about our own problems. Like, okay, we have implicits, we have givens, we have higher kind of types, blah. But the broader programming world doesn't care about higher kind of types. They care about the performance, the concurrency, the static typing, the tooling. Our build tools are actually pretty good. Like, people complain about them, but you go to any other language and you realize that we have it actually pretty good in the Scala community. So I feel like this kind of outward-facing attitude of going out to sell Scala to the world rather than just like talking amongst ourselves, that's how we build a broader and more diverse community.
One topic that I see talked about quite a bit now often, which is logical, is Scala 3, of course, because that's where the language currently is at. But I am curious, how many of you in the crowd are currently using Scala 3? Okay, so maybe 50-50. And for those of you that had your hand raised, can you keep them raised if you are using it in industry as well, not for side projects or anything like that? Okay, so quite a bit smaller. So there's obviously still an interest, I think, in the community of Scala 2. So I'd love to shift gears a little bit and ask a few questions related to Scala 2, because as the audience has sort of showed, there are a lot of users of Scala 2. So can you talk to us a little bit about the future of Scala 2? Looking at the one person who's in charge of Scala 2, basically.
I mean, to be honest, the future of Scala 2 is Scala 3, eventually.
All right, well, thanks for that, yeah.
So, and we see that really as our mission. We want that to make a success. We want it to as much as we can to help people make the migration easy and successful, and that's really where we focus. At the same time, obviously, we are aware that Scala 2 is still going to be around for a while, and it's a lot of value for a lot of people if we keep improving it in areas where it makes sense, such as tooling, obviously. So we keep investing in tooling to make sure we are not falling behind compared to Scala 3, compared to other ecosystems, let's say.
Yeah. And I know there's also a couple people on stage that are at companies that are also still on Scala 2. Could you maybe speak to your Scala 2/3 experience?
Sure. So Databricks currently has no immediate plans to move to Scala 2. To move to Scala 3. We are still working on our 2.12 to 2.13 migration. It's in progress. It will take a while. The last migration from 2.10 to 2.12 took about 6 months, but we are a bigger company now. It may take a year or 2 years. And frankly, Scala 2 is not a problem at Databricks. So there isn't that much motivation to migrate. Back in the day, Scala 2.10 performance was bad. Compile time performance was really bad. Lots of compiler crashes, other bugs. IDE support wasn't great. Most of that's gone now. The compiler is fast enough. It's not great. I want it to be faster, but it's okay fast. IDE support's pretty good. If there are bugs in IDE, it's generally our fault, not Scala's fault. And collections, even though we're on 2.12, we haven't gone to 2.13. Many of the old type inference bugs or other bugs in the Scala collections have been ironed out. So I think the future for Scala 2, for the improvements, it can go on Scala 3. But Scala 2 is actually a very stable, a very solid language that people can keep using and really enjoy, really. It may still have curly braces, but compared to many other languages, it's still a great language to write and great language to read. Yeah.
Glens?
I think I already mentioned that Morgan Stanley uses Scala in a very unique way, and we have 22 million lines of code. We have to migrate 22 million lines of code. It's going to be extremely painful, but we are going to do it. So definitely we need Scala 3 to be stable, and because of the complexity of our system, we tend to eat every single Scala compiler out there, Scala compiler bug out there. But it's definitely something that we are going to do. But of course, we need time. It's taking a while to migrate to Scala 2.13.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So I want to go back to those of you that had your hand raised. So if you are an industry user of Scala on Scala 2, can you raise your hand? How many of you with your hand raised do you think in the foreseeable future will be migrating to Scala 3? Okay, so there's still a decent amount of hand raised. And I'm curious for those of you, that do have plans, if you have support from management or not. And I found a lot of people had questions about, we know Scala 3 is a better language than Scala 2. Technically, without a doubt, people seem to sort of enjoy Scala 3 more than Scala 2. However, the issue is that we can't necessarily go to our managers and say, I like writing Scala 3 more than Scala 2. We should migrate. So I'm curious from those on the stage, what advice would you give to those individuals to help convince their management as to why they should migrate to Scala 3?
I can see few benefits. First of them is that Scala finally achieves stability. So by that I mean stability and compatibility between versions. So before that, every new change, every bug found in the compiler, every new improvement that you wanted to use in your project means that you need to migrate. Right now, there is no need for that, and it is actually amazing. You can write some microservice like 2 years ago in Scala 3.0.0, it is small, you finish that, it just works. And then now you need something that depends on it, that uses as a dependency. In your project that is using Scala 3.3, you don't need to change anything. You can just use it as a dependency. This would be unthinkable in Scala 2 world. Moreover, even if you find some critical bug in this service, you can just fix it using Scala 3.0.0, republish it. It will also work. You don't need to upgrade it. Of course, you can upgrade Scala in this, but you don't need to. You have a choice, and we still have full backward compatibility. So this is one of practical reasons. The other is more of a long-term thinking, that Scala 3 is much better language for modeling a business domain. there is this notion, I think it originated in Rust ecosystem, or maybe it is some from academia and is much older, of type tightness. This is basically explained as what fraction of data construct for any given type that passes compilation represent correct state during the execution. And with Scala type system, you can achieve in many cases 100% type tightness. You can achieve that states that are incorrect in the runtime are not representable in the compile time. And of course, most of these things were possible in Scala 2, but it was not intuitive. In Scala 3, we made the powerful features of the language, powerful features of the type system also intuitive. Just to give you one example, for example, union types. They are great to encoding some sets of constants that can be used in given contexts. You probably could do that in Scala 2, but it was really hard and requires some compiler magic. Or in some cases, it wasn't even possible. So yeah, so we have that. 2 arguments from me.
Okay.
I mean, of course, there are lots and lots of reasons why Scala 3 is a better language. But if you need to convince your manager, so I would say that you could say 1 or 2 or 3 of 3 things. I think the first one is to say, look, Scala 3 has much safer implicits. The implicit system, all the footguns are gone. The fear that essentially you will introduce unknown side effects in your code base with the old implicits, which had lots of essentially trouble spots, is all gone. It's much safer now. So you can have much more trust in the code base. Second thing is meta-programming, where essentially the previous macros, they are sort of put together with wires and sticker tape or something like that, and they are very compiler dependent and very fragile as well. Often they break in corner cases. Now they're much, much more solid. They're really put on solid foundations and you can trust them. And I think the third one is to say, look, this is going to be a hard migration, but it's going to be the last one, because Scala 3 is backwards, forwards compatible basically forever, or for as long as we can look, whereas essentially for Scala 2 you had to upgrade every couple of years, or lately it was a bit more than every couple of years. But those would be the 3 reasons I would give my manager to convince him or her.
My 2 reasons would be, again, about people. So let's be honest, we don't want to write Scala 2, we want to write Scala 3. And, if your company gets stuck on Scala 2, then probably you're going to have problems hiring Scala developers that want to write Scala 3. And the other advice will be that, of course, all our companies depend on open source. Open source eventually is going to migrate to Scala 3 only, and that means that you are going to stuck with very old library versions full of bugs. You don't want to do that, so let's join the Scala 3 train.
So we've talked about a lot of really great things, but I also think sometimes it's helpful to look at some of the areas of weakness that we have, because it helps us figure out what we should work on. And I'm curious to hear from you, what do you think is currently the biggest weakness in the Scala ecosystem?
Scala is so great in many ways. It's obviously the best language, and it has awesome tools like Scala Native, we've seen by Wojciech. It has Scala JS, which is the best 2JS compiler, most compatible 2JS compiler. Tooling is Scala CLI is really amazing. And what sometimes is a bit of a weakness in Scala is that we're not putting these things to use. I see companies like JetBrains, they just push Kotlin into a direction. And there's nobody in Scala that's pushing so hard, saying like, let's take Scala Native and push it somewhere concrete, or let's take Scala CLI and push it onto Spark and make sure people go back to using Scala instead of Python, or things like this.
Ken?
So I would also say lack of a big industrial backer to actually push it and evangelize it and things like that. And secondly, I would say we are currently suffering from a fragmented library ecosystem. So that means we do have great libraries, but we have different libraries, and it's very hard to essentially pick the right one for you. And we'll have to sort that out at some point. And there again, I think the guideline of simplicity first might help us.
Yeah, I think one other big weakness is there isn't a easy enough stack to get started with for people who don't know Scala at all and aren't interested in learning very much to get started just so you can benefit from all the cool things that Scala gives you. So, for example, right, like let's say I want to start up a backend service. Like, how many of you are backend service developers? Yeah, all of you. Okay, so you go. So you let's say you go to PyCon this year, like the Python conference, and everyone there has performance problems, concurrency problems, type safety problems, packaging problems. And I want to sell them on, okay, look at Scala 3. It's so good, it has all these cool things. The syntax is even very similar to Python nowadays. You'll learn it just fine. And then someone's going to say, okay, I run the backend service, what do I start with? And then really give them like Akka, that's really scalable, but maybe relatively complex. Would you give them HTTP4S, that's complex in its own different way, and maybe good if you already know this stuff, but if you're like a Python developer who just learned Python 2 years ago in school and has no theoretical background, it's very challenging for them to learn with. I think that's maybe one of the big things blocking the Scala community from growing, is that lots of people want the stuff the Scala language gives, but the Scala language doesn't have the ecosystem necessary to onboard all these newcomers and less sophisticated users who just want to use Scala and benefit without having to learn too much or dig too deeply.
If we understand the biggest weakness as a weakness that improving in that regard would bring the best benefits, the most of benefits, I think this will be IDE support. And I mean both metals. We really should focus on improving stability of metals. And by here I mean not only the metals itself, but all the tools that lie underneath. So Bloop, Zinc, etc. And also I'm thinking about IntelliJ. Guys, please support transparent inlines already, please.
So because we got started a little bit late, I have time for one more question. And as somebody who does work pretty closely with a lot of the compiler team and different tooling authors, sometimes I feel like there's a lot of knowledge and a lot of information that gets exchanged amongst each others, and we forget sometimes to give it to the outside world, or that we think the outside world is aware of it, but they're totally not aware of it. So I want to give you an opportunity to let anybody out there know something that you feel like they should know that maybe they don't. And to rephrase that, because that sounded ridiculous as I said it, is I wanted to give you an opportunity to let the audience know something you feel like they should know that maybe they don't, that maybe you talk about amongst your teams all the time, or that you see talked about often in the compiler team or the core tooling team, that maybe the outside world isn't aware of. Like, what do you think is important for them to know? And that'll be this takeaway that they can take.
This is a running joke already, but there will be no Scala 4.
If you want to start migrating to Scala 3, don't just switch the compiler, but go on the website and read the migration guide, and it tells you there's flags in Scala 2, there's SPT plugins, and there's a lot of other advice that you should read and take it step by step.
Sorry, mine is not going to be about tooling. It's again going to be about people. So if you're new to Scala and you think you have nothing to present, forget about it. You are going to present. So we need people like you to tell us what's wrong with our community. So we need more talks like Monica's. So please do submit talk proposal, to your local meetup, to whatever conference is around, because we need more voices. So if you think you have nothing to say, think again, because I'm pretty sure you do.
I will again build upon what you said. I would add also that companies' voices are extremely important, especially for Scala, because it's used in so many different ways, on so many different levels. And already this conference proved many people would come and say, oh, but we need this, and you should do that, and you could do that, the Scala Center. And so if we don't hear from you, from the companies, we cannot nudge a little bit the research and the community and the maintainers either. So please get engaged, get your companies involved. Yes, it can be on advisory board level with the paying, or it can be otherwise. But if we don't hear from you, we cannot do, that is a mute voice. So please step up.
Yeah, I guess as an open source maintainer, what I would tell people is that contributing fixes to open source libraries is not that hard. You figure out how to run compile, you put some print-line statements and see what's going wrong, and then you fix it. And often these fixes are really easy. At Databricks, we will very often fix bugs in upstream libraries, upstream code. You may not know the language, you may not know build system. I fixed bugs in Go code before I never knew Go. And it's not that hard. You already are spending all your time debugging your confusing code that your colleagues wrote, and it's not going to be any worse debugging code that someone else wrote in the community. And so the opening issues is great, but don't stop there. Just put some print lines, run the test, and see what happens, and just fix the bugs. It's not so hard.
I have one as well that I'll leave you with. So mine would be that the people that you see on the stage or the people that you interact with online are often much more approachable than you believe they are. If you are just getting started, or if you have questions on something and you're doubting whether you should ask or whether you should reach out, I would always err on the side of reaching out. My own personal story of getting involved in open source and tooling and the things that I'm involved in was because I was able to reach out to somebody, and somebody took the time to literally call me, explain a project to me and get me involved. That if it wasn't for that person, I probably wouldn't be involved today. And I feel like a lot of people that are actively involved have a similar story to that. So don't be afraid to reach out if you ever have questions to people. Yeah, I believe we don't have any time for questions from the audience because I'm getting glares from the side over here.
We have.
The thing is that we have a couple of surprises here. And we are not having time enough for doing that. So
Okay.
let's do in a couple of questions.
All right.
Okay.
And probably I am not going to take my flight, but let's sacrifice him. No, it's true.
Okay, a
But
couple of questions.
let's do questions.
Sure. All right.
Yeah.
Actually, I wanted to add something to what Lukas said. The migration, SBT migration tool. So actually, there's now a course that the Scala Center published. So I would just suggest taking a look at it. It's really great. And when people start using it, they will probably discover bugs, but they can be fixed.
There's a British newspaper, Telegraph, and like once a month they publish an article which is usually titled something like, "But who will think of the rich people? We suffer too." And so my question is, who will think of the senior developers? So there's a lot of focus on getting people into the community, but like senior developers have different requirements. Like we run async profiler on the compiler and like read those stacks and all of that stuff. What work has been done to retain the people that could do like work outreach and do all that other stuff? What work has been done to retain it? Where can we do better? And again, how can the community help in retaining experienced developers and advocates for the language?
Caring for us seniors is quite natural for us because like every improvement to the language is mostly focused on seniors because they will benefit from that the most. One example I can see, for example, right now, the one person is working for a backend optimizer for Scala 3, and I think for the seniors, for the big companies using Scala, this will be a huge benefit. Just one example.
I would just like to add, I mean, you have people coming to the community, retaining, and then growing. And so I would say that senior people also, senior developers, senior people, senior developers, it's like something is not right here. Should also, I mean, I don't have an answer, but like it would be great if we could have some kind of, talk maybe after to see how we can engage them to actually form maybe a little community or something and start doing it, because I think this transfer of experience would be great, but also that others can see the path of the engagement. So, okay, I'm here now, I can be there, and then later, I can engage in this community, and then maybe later also in SIP committee or something like this, so that's clear. That's a missing part, and it would be great if you're interested that we speak about it later and see how we can,
If I can add, having new people in the community doesn't mean that the old people in the community leave. I mean, I'm still here, right? I think there is space for everybody, right? This conference had how many talks, right? And I'm sure that we can have both talks for beginners, both talks for experienced people. We can have workshops about very advanced feature of the language, and we can have workshops about more basic feature of the languages, right? I think we don't need to exclude one group to include the other. We can. I don't think welcoming new people in the community is a threat to the senior people in our community.
Yeah. All right. I'm just going to hijack this. So no more questions because of the time, but also there is a message that we would like to speak about or send. So would you please come to the stage? So we would like to say that the Scala Center and as an organization, but also we personally, all the members, and I'm sure that that's the case also for the group, but I'm not going to speak for the group, we are supporting and would like to share the support for Ukrainian people that are now, I don't know what's the right, migrants, misplaced, I'm not sure, that are refugees, thank you. So we at the Scala Center have made this program with power coders, so we are giving our time to teach people that are coming so they can also adapt to the new market and find jobs. This is really our niche and something that we can contribute. But there are many other ways that you can help engage with people that are coming to your community. And we as Scala, like we were speaking about communities in general and people and so on, I think there is plenty of things you could do. So I would like to invite you, to tell us more and to let us know what else we can do.
Yes, so I gave a talk today, so maybe some of you saw that, and I arrived from Ukraine, which now takes around 2 days or at least 1 day to have 2 trains and a flight here. And that's why I wanted to share this message because I see that there are a lot of Ukrainians at the conference, and it's not the thing that happened often before. It's not something that I saw before. And I think that it happens now because a lot of Ukrainians moved from Ukraine to other countries, mostly in Europe as well. And that's why I think it's important to engage Ukrainians that are right now in Europe in different countries, and they want to be part of the community as well, global Scala community, and engage with local communities. So what I was thinking about is that if you know someone or meet someone from Ukraine and they are Scala developers or they want to learn Scala, please to help them engage and amplify their voices to speak at various events, help them maybe like organize or start communities, especially if they've been active in Ukrainian community, and doing even like small things when you just talk to someone and tell them that you kind of support them and that you are engaging with Ukrainians, kind of hosting people. That's also very helpful for us to hear that like there is someone out there, especially like it could be hard when you are in Ukraine and you don't kind of hear this message outside. But when you travel, it's it's nice to hear that so many countries are supporting Ukrainians, and kind of on the personal level, there are small things that everyone can do, like in terms of donations and just talking to people and helping them kind of integrate.
Thank you so much.
Other than that, just please give those that were on the panel a round of applause, please.
Thank you, Chris.